Welcome to Super Meat World! Into this update, we're gonna play a whole bunch of chapters that I thought about doing or showcasing, but were not meant of a full update, for many reasons that we will figure out as we play them. The first chapter that I'm gonna showcase in this video is Super Meatland, the original, which was made by _hell_. I talked about it briefly in my Super Meatland 2 video, as in this chapter pretty much was everything that Super Meatland 2 was, only though more annoying and not as polished. It's not a bad chapter per se, but it's just not as enjoyable to play. Some of the levels in the chapter can be merciless, your jumps have to be 100% perfect. I mean, the middle section of this level can be a huge pain in the ass because of how precise your jumps have to be and how fast you have to pull all of it off. It's definitely a harder chapter, and not always for the right reasons. And I don't like how come you have to jump at the beginning of the level because running off the ledge will simply get you killed. Another gripe that I have concerning this chapter is the fact that you'll see a lot of levels into the chapter repeat themselves. I mean, we have the first version of the level right here, and later on there's a level that looks exactly like this. Yeah, they barely change anything here. And it's not like as if it's one isolated case, because it happens once again into this one level. Yeah, the beginning is now the end, and the end is now the beginning. Essentially, even though it's a 20 level chapter, I'd say there's something like 12 or 13 levels into this chapter which are original. And also, this is the other thing which I really hate about the chapter. The really tiny narrow jumps that you have to do through tiny corridors. It's especially more prominent into this one level right here. The last hallway will pretty much make you have nightmares. And of course, you also have another one of these switcheroos level. I mean, it's exactly the same thing. There's no changes between the two levels that we've just seen, except that the beginning part is now the end and the end is the beginning, once again. And there was also a lens flare in order to look pretty. Now, I didn't showcase it into the video, but this is a redoing of the first level of the chapter, and more narrow jumps, and I really don't know why the hell you have all of these cramped areas right here, but the top portion of the level is so empty and is void of absolutely everything. Also, just like Super Meatland 2, this chapter has a whole lot of shortcuts that certainly were not meant to be used, and just kinda hurt the chapter a little bit more. I mean, why would you go through the trouble of doing all of these narrow jumps when you can simply shortcut your way to the end of the level? Definitely a lack of care into the level design here. And there's also a whole bunch of these levels which really make you backtrack through a ton of obstacles and landscape, and it's really not all that fun to do. And like Super Meatland 2, there's also a whole lot of these levels where you have to go through tons of shafts, climb down and in and out of them in order to get keys. Essentially, there's a lot of repetition to the level design. There's a couple of more original levels into the mix, like this one. These levels are pretty fun to play, but yeah, I didn't show it into the video, but I am very sure that there's a way to shortcut your way through the final saw blade that you see on the top, instead of taking the long route down and right here. And just like Super Meatland 2, the chapter ends on a completely nonsensical note, with a level that is incredibly easy to beat compared to everything that you've went through. The second chapter that we're gonna check out into this one video will be called Salt Factory XX. Or Salt Factory 20, because obviously there's been 20 of these chapters out there. This chapter was made by Birdmaster 1, and as you might have noticed, it's supposed to be a 20 level chapter, but when the chapter was uploaded, there was a bug in the uploading and level 11 went missing. And since level 11 is nowhere to be found, you cannot progress past it, and therefore you can only play the first 10 levels of the chapter. If you want to play the rest of the chapter, you have to go look it up onto the Super Meat Boy forums. The chapter's author made available all of the dev mode files for the chapter, so you can load up all of the missing levels and play them into the level editor if you want to. But since I'm pretty sure that there's absolutely nobody who's gonna do that, I'm gonna be sticking to the levels that you can play on Super Meat World, aka the first 10 of them. And for curiosity's sake, I'm gonna go play the level which broke the chapter. There's got to be a reason why it broke, right? But the most fucked up thing about this entire thing is that even though the chapter is broken, Team Meat still featured it. I mean, I really don't know what to say about this one. As for the chapter itself, I gotta say, from all of the redesign and remakes and expert remixes of chapter, this is probably the best one that there's been made out there, but even then it still has a couple of failings because first of all, a lot of the levels in the chapter are way too dark and it's pretty hard to see what's going on, and you need to have either really good eyes or you need to be hunched all over your monitor. And finally, as you will see a little bit later, some of the redesigns are incredibly idiotic. But this one, however, is not part of this, but I have to say, as far as difficulty go, it will be way too hard for most people to attempt. But hey, the author deserves some kudos because unlike many level designers out there who really do lazy reattachments or addition to levels and just call it a night, this one level is significantly changed a whole lot. With that said, however, this one version of the level is really painful to navigate. The final jump in particular is a real doozy. Yeah, I really gotta find another way in order to make it all the way down here. Yeah, you just have to do a really tight corner jump off the bottom of the conveyor belt. Okay, now that I was talking about retarded levels, welcome to the point where it finally applies. You'd think that it seems like a pretty innocuous remake of the level, but yeah, instead of the ending here, there's a key and... okay, just make slide appear? Okay, I really don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here. So let's go look it up into dev mode. Honestly, even after looking it up in dev mode, I still wouldn't get it, but... here, I can see into dev mode now that this one passage is not the same color than the rest. Yeah, that's right. In order to finish this level, you need to go through an invisible passage hidden within the tiles. And finally, you cannot simply go through it because in order to fit through there, you need to be hugging the conveyor belt. So essentially, you don't even need the key. Wow, that level was dumb. And speaking of levels that are dumb, yeah, here's another one right here. Instead of making it so that there's a whole lot of rocket launchers all around the place, let's just replace it by one big rocket launcher. And finally, instead of having one big rocket launcher, let's have 20 small ones. Oh my god, I cannot believe that I actually managed to beat that. And it will come even more into light after looking at the replay. Really. This level, however, is garbage. It's like, it's almost entirely luck-based. Not only the jumps are really narrow, but the entire level is on breakable blocks. That's a real shame, especially considering that the final level of the chapter is actually pretty damn good. I gotta say, this is another one of these redesigns in the chapter that really play well for the most part. And at least I gotta like how come the later levels of the chapter, I was finally able to see something. So that's as far as we can play, but before we move on to the next chapter, we will go and play the one level that couldn't be played, which is called Kennebald. And yeah, I'm gonna speed it up because, well, you will see why I'm speeding that up as you will see how long this level is. Okay, so I think so far we've played about the equivalent of about 3 levels, and yeah, we're still going, we're still jumping through all of these little saw blades, everyone. Oh my god, why are there so many rocket launchers here? And while you're doing all this, you also gotta hurry, because you're still being chased by the saw blades that you saw at the beginning of the level. And stunts like these really don't help, but holy shit, how long is this fucking level already? Why is it still going? You know what is better than one hard level? It's 20 easy ones all stitched up into one. Yeah, it took over a minute and a half to finish this level, and we were running non-stop through all of this, so yeah, I guess the level was corrupted because it was way too big. We're gonna be taking a look at the final chapter into this one video in order to pad things up and close things. It's called Cuttin Skies, and you're already in for a great ride whenever the creator cannot spell skies properly. And yeah, what you're looking at is pretty much Cuttin Skies in a nutshell. Really unfair, barely playable levels that are unbearingly difficult and which really are relentless. I mean, it's not enough that you have to backtrack through the entire level back and forth twice, but let's add a moving saw blade, a saw blade launcher, and a fast-firing rocket launcher, which shoots all the way across the screen. This whole level is relying on a complete gamble. Okay, here we go, I'm done, I'm gonna do it, I guess we're not gonna do it. Alright, fuck this, we're just gonna go to another level right here. I'm not gonna be doing complete playthroughs of any of these chapters. I'm just gonna showcase them briefly in order for you to have an idea of what the chapter is all about. And right here, we have another level in which you have to go back and forth. It's not as obnoxious as the last two one have been, but why the hell do you have to wall jump up really small holes like that? What does it add to the level? Yeah, I just died because I couldn't fit into this one tiny hole. Thank you, game. Oh, and right here, we have another one of these levels, which pretty much rely on trial and error. You have to guess where the keys will fall, at which interval they fall. You cannot jump too high because you'll die to an invisible saw blade. I mean, was it hard to allow you to see into the key shaft here? This level could have been fun, but unfortunately, it's just incredibly obnoxious to play. Okay, I started with the right, so I should be... oh, okay. I thought for 1 second I was gonna die. Yeah, that's another weird thing with the level. You start by collecting the keys on the right, and you finish them at the right. I mean, I don't know, in cases like this, usually you start with one side and you finish with the other one. This is another level that could have been pretty easy, but as it is, the entire challenge to this one level is simply to go from floor to floor. Yeah, you have to slide through this hole while the two saw blades are aligning in a perfect way so that you'll be able to go through them. Also, you have levels which are incredibly boring and repetitive to play too. I mean, some of these levels seem as if they've been designed by robots, and for robots, because I'm not too sure who will find a level like that fun to play. Yeah, eventually your attention span just fades away and you stop caring altogether. And here comes another level in which it's pretty much the same thing. I mean, why would you play this? There's absolutely nothing fun with this level. And so is this one. Are there any levels into this one chapter which happen to be fun? Because so far I haven't found a single one. You gotta start all of those calculations in order to get this key. Calculation obtained, jump successful. Jump to the key. Ah, fuck you. Go to hell, you asshole. Oh my god, will this chapter finally do something right for a change? Well, this one level is pretty much the first thing that it has done which resembles that, even though that it has another one of the hallmarks of the chapter which I hate. Backtracking. But hey, for one time, the difficulty on this one level is manageable, and this is a level that is reasonably finishable by human people. And here's another one of these levels, bearing the overly brutal start. And finally, let's hear it for one level which doesn't require tremendous amounts of backtracking, as we've seen in almost every level so far. I upload you, Cuttin Skies, with a hiss. But let's hear it for one level which doesn't require you to make really narrow jump through very specific hallways and holes and everything. Okay, there's this one jump for Bandage Girl, but hey, it's easy to do, so I don't mind it. Oh, speaking of jumping through tiny holes, here we go again! And let's mix it up with our favorite hallmark of the chapter so far, excessive backtracking. Oh, we're gonna have a lot of fun playing this level. Oh, and also you get shot by off-screen rockets, just in case that you couldn't tell already. I mean, this is probably the hardest chapter that you'll find on Super Meat World, but for the most part, it is hard, but for all the wrong reason. The levels are so hard mainly because they are so poorly designed. Oh, speaking of poorly designed, you never should base your levels based on glitches of the engine because, yeah, sometimes the engine will decide to work correctly and it will pretty much fuck you all over. Yep, the moment that your character suddenly decides to not hug the platform anymore, it's all over. You're gonna die and there's absolutely nothing that you can do in order to change your fate in this story. I mean, don't get me wrong, the levels all look really good and they really have a very distinct Cuttin Alley flavor, but, well, doesn't really matter considering that pretty much all of the levels play really poorly. And also, one pet peeve that I have about this chapter is that, well, you play as Bandage Girl, but you also have to save Bandage Girl, so do the author claim that this is the ultimate quest in order to go fuck yourself? I really don't want to think about it too much. Oh, speaking of really awesome gameplay mechanics, yeah, you have to dodge all of these rockets or go into an alternate room while you're waiting for a very slow opening gate to open. But thankfully, not all levels with Gimmick are bad. This one actually is pretty fun. Well, fun as far as this chapter is related, because as it is, it's pretty much just an uphill battle, but hey, at least it's not bullshit. If you want bullshit, just look at this one level right here. You remember that one level from Expert Remix in which you had the Super Shaft? Well, hey, that level is for wusses. And this right here is pretty much the modus operandi of Super Meat World. Every level in the main game is for wusses. That's right, we hate fun. Instead, we're just gonna do all of these levels in which all of the jumping is pixel perfect and your timing has to be impeccable in order to do anything. Of course, every single person out there will play those levels instead of the carefully crafted levels from the designers of this game, which were highly reputed and lauded by everyone who played this game. I mean, when you have levels like this and that represents the easy portions of your chapter, you kinda have a problem. The premise of the proper final level of the chapter is pretty original, but you can be sure once again this is one level that will pretty much drive you insane. Yep, you have to avoid rockets which pretty much drift into outer space because there's only a handful of blocks and platforms out there in order for the rockets to smash into, and if your jumps are too narrow, eventually the rockets will simply circle way too tightly around you and there will be absolutely nothing to save you from your death. With that said, I kinda like the feeling of drifting into this desolate pink sky in which you're being hounded by the minions of death, which are symbolized by all of these rocket launchers. But hey, at least as long as you get behind this block, the level is over, because there's no further way for the rocket launcher to shoot you. And here's the final level of the chapter. Whew, that was a hard one. And that'll be it for my rundown of Cuttin Skies, as well as the first half of my grab bag collection video. I've decided to split this into 2 videos because otherwise the video will have been way too long. So, stay tuned for part 2.